Hi, and we're back for part 2 of how important greens are for your painting and our in-depth color theory about the color green. So we have used our medium yellow and our, let's see what color this was. This was Calypso Sky to make a bright, high chroma, light value green. And we are going to now use some Turner's Yellow. And Turner's Yellow is named after the English landscape painter Joseph Mylord William Turner. So this is apparently one of his kind of favorite yellows. It's still a light value, but moving more toward a medium value, medium intensity yellow. And so I'm also going to use a little bit darker blue color. So you can see now that we're lower in value and lower in intensity with our blue color. So I'm going to make a sample here on my chart where I am taking my next color of yellow. And one thing I want to call your attention to is how I am cleaning my palette knife off. Anytime I've gone into a puddle of paint and done something, I want to clean it off before I go into any other puddle of paint because I want to make sure that I'm not contaminating my colors on my palette. So now I've made my 2 blues that I've used and my 2 yellows. So let's make some magic happen here. We are going to make a green color. I'm going to move some of my yellow off to the side. And I want you to always be very methodical about your mixing color and what you're doing. Pay attention to everything that's happening on your palette. So now with a lower intensity blue and a lower intensity yellow, I am making a lower intensity green. So you can see here, I'll put a color swatch side by side. My green is darker and duller than the green that I made previously. And that's exactly what I would have expected to happen because the yellow and the blue that I started with are lower in value and lower in intensity or lower in chroma. All right, so let's put a swatch of this on our chart. So it's going to be this yellow and this blue, so it would go in this section of our chart. So there we have 2 very different green colors. I'm not going to make a tint, a tone, and a shade of this color green, but you could absolutely do that for your own edification and to see how these different colors work together. You could add white to this, black to this, red to this, and make those colors as well. And you could create a whole nother color chart of tints of this, tones and shades of that. But we now have another green color here on our on our chart. So it's time to put some more yellows out on our palette. I'm going to put out some golden ochre. So I will be putting out some of that over here. It's slightly darker in value and slightly lower in intensity than our Turner's Yellow it was. So again, we are going lower in intensity, lower in value with each one of our yellows, and we're doing the same thing with our blue, except I'm going to use a cobalt hue, which is a very intense blue, but it's going to be darker in value. So there we go with some of that blue. That's a very kind of basic primary blue. So let's start with our golden ochre, and we'll put some of that here on our palette. And the thing with color theory is everything works perfectly on your palette. If I am telling you we're going to lower the intensity of this when we do that, that's what's going to happen on our palette. What doesn't happen is in the real world, if I'm painting something and I apply one of these green colors to a painting, it may not be anything like the green color that I wanted or needed there, so we may have to alter what we had planned. And this is when practice and looking at your different color charts comes in handy, because you'll know that, oh, I need to add, that color is too dull. So let's go back and try to make that color a little bit brighter by adding either some of our brighter yellow or brighter blue to our green. All right, so here we have a nice shade of green, or not shade of green, don't want to confuse the issue. I have a nice green color. It's kind of a medium value, medium intensity green. It looks like it would paint a very beautiful leaf or a tree. So that will end up going here on my chart. And I'm not brushing this color out. I'm applying it with a palette knife so that I get a nice, very opaque coverage of color there. And I want to keep myself organized, so I'm going to add my swatch of golden ochre over here. There we go. Nice opaque swatch of that. And we'll add our cobalt hue along the top of our chart as one of our blue colors. Alrighty. Now I'm going to use a color that's called yellow ochre. This is a great color. It's moving into what people might call earth tones, or it is a lower intensity yellow than our golden ochre. So we're getting duller and slightly darker. So we'll go ahead and put a swatch of that here on our chart. And I would advise you to make your chart on something that you want to hang on to for a while. Don't just do it on a piece of copy paper. Do it on heavy watercolor paper, or I'm using some illustration board here. But if you're going to the trouble of doing one of these exercises, then let's make sure that we keep it to refer back to. All right, so the next color I'm going to put on here, I'm going to go ahead and use some Prussian Blue. And Prussian Blue is a very, very intense, very, very dark blue color. So it is going to look extremely dark here on the palette. And what I want to show you is what this color looks like. And I need to kind of reveal the color, and white is going to do that. We're going to make a tint of Prussian Blue so that you can see that it's a very, very vibrant blue color. So this is what we're working with. Very, very high intensity, dark value blue. All right, so I'm going to make a little swatch of this on my color chart. All right, so we will now use yellow ochre and Prussian Blue to make a shade of green. And then I just have a couple of other little tidbits to share with you about color. All right, yellow ochre there. And we will add some Prussian Blue to that. And we get a fascinating shade of green here. Even though our yellow ochre was a very dull yellow color, the Prussian Blue is a very intense blue, so we get a very vibrant shade of green here. And so let's make a little mark on our chart where this color would land. All right, so you can see we've made 4 different colors of green. These two look very similar, but then if you notice, these 2 yellows look similar and these 2 blues look similar, so it makes sense that those greens would look similar. But let's do another couple of experiments here. I've got so much that I could talk to you about greens and mixing colors for hours and hours and hours, but I want to show you that we can make a tint, no, I'm sorry, not a tint, make a shade of yellow ochre that is green. I can take yellow ochre and add a little bit of black to this, and I will get a very, very dull, very dark green. And this could be the perfect green that you need if you were painting some trees or something and you needed a green color that's going to recede into the background and not call a lot of attention to itself. That's a pretty, to be honest with you, that's a pretty nasty shade of green, but it is made with yellow and black, which does have a considerable amount of blue in it. So it does fall into this kind of family of colors that we're working with. But let's do a little bit of experimenting here. So we will let's take our yellow, or light yellow, and just for giggles here, so we've got a light value, high chroma yellow, and let's add a little bit of Prussian blue to this and see what kind of green we get this time. So this is a pretty bright, this is a very Kermit the Frog kind of bright green, but it's a different green than what we got initially. So I'm going to take some of this and I'm going to put it here on my chart where it would be the medium yellow plus the Prussian blue. So it would go right over here on my chart. So different color green, same yellow, different blues gives you different greens. So we can take our same medium yellow and we can move this to the side. And let's add some of this blue to it. Emily, let me know if anyone has any questions.
No questions yet. They're just saying glad that we do these lives for everybody. And then somebody did just come in with a question. It says, what would I mix to get pistachio?
Well, the first thing you would need to do, I'm going to make my little swatch here on my chart, which was the medium yellow and this blue. So we're going to put that on here. Well, let's do, I would put out the color that you want to make. Let's make a swatch of that. And then let's try to find a yellow and a blue that are about the same value and the same intensity. And let's mix a little bit of blue into our yellow and see how close that gets us. Then we have to evaluate the color we've mixed to the color we're trying to match. Does it need more blue? Does it need more yellow? Does it need maybe a touch of red to tone it down? I mean, those are all the kind of questions that you're going to have to ask yourself. And if you add a bit of red to that color and you're mixing away, then you have to evaluate it. And it's like, now that I've added that red, does it need more white? Maybe it needs a little white and a little yellow to brighten that color back up just a little bit. Maybe it needs more blue. And so you just have to keep adding the color that you think it needs to get you as close as you can get to making your pistachio.
So you would recommend having a reference available to be able to make sure that you're getting the closest color possible to what you want.
Yes, because when you say pistachio, I have no idea what pistachio is to you.
Right.
Is it a light value, low intensity green, or is it a medium value, medium intensity green? See,
and it also has to do with the lighting in which
you're looking
in.
at it.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Everything is relative. So, and that's why you wouldn't, to describe a pistachio color, everybody's got a different pistachio in their head.
From their experiences and what they've
Some people
learned.
are the nuts in the shell, and some people are the ice cream.
I'm the nuts in the shell.
See, it's all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But that's your frame of reference, and so that influences how you think about color.
Yes.
Because I've had people explain to me, or as best they can, they keep describing a color, and I'm like, okay, let's get more scientific, because I don't think the color that's in my head is the color that you are talking about. And like, there's a movie called The Women, and there's a scene when they're talking about fingernail polish, and the color that is the hot topic is jungle red.
Jungle red.
Jungle red. So from that description, jungle red, you don't know what that red
A
is.
tropical flower, or maybe like a beetle. I don't know.
Who knows? But that was the color they were all about, is the jungle red. All right, so we're going to take more of our medium yellow, and we are going to add some of our cobalt hue to this. And we will get yet another shade, not another shade, we'll get another color. We'll get another green color here.
Hue.
Yes. And this is going to be slightly different than the other greens we've got. But if you notice, all four of these green colors are fairly similar because they all started out with the same color yellow. So if we were to repeat this with each of these other three yellows and the other blues, you'll get a very interesting assortment of green colors that you can refer back to. And I don't think anybody has the time or the fortitude to sit through me explaining that I've mixed a blue and yellow together to make another green color. Yes. But with, you can take just, I probably would do the yellow colors that I paint with the most. So it might be 3 or 4 yellows that I use the most, and maybe 2 or 3 blues that I use, and I would really make my little color chart of those. And if you wanted to do a really, really good job with this, you would make sure that all of these colors go right up to the edge of the squares so that you can really see much closer together how these colors
Are similar or different.
And you can't judge color. This is another little, as one of my teachers would have said, let me cast another pearl here. You cannot judge color from a distance. Color has to be adjacent to for you to see what it really is. That's why when you're shopping in the department store and you pick up that navy blue blouse and you're like, oh, those navy blue pants over there probably go with this. They look great while you are standing 10 feet apart, but when you put the blouse next to the pants, you can be like, oh no, these are not the same color blue. But as soon as you move them apart, they look the same. So color has to be adjacent to it, and remember that color is always relative. If you were to paint one of these duller greens on top of a red stop sign, these dull greens would suddenly seem so much more vibrant because of the color that they are placed next to. So always keep that in mind, that what's right in one situation may be very different in another situation. So it can't be that I've mixed this green before, it's going to be perfect in my next application, because it may not be the right color at all. So if you're looking at a painting, let's just hold this here. So if you were looking at a painting, these color greens here are very, very light value, low chroma colors, which seem odd on such a bright painting, but I didn't need this this green to be any brighter than it is. So everything is relative. You have to interpret the color you need in the situation you're going to apply it. So always keep that in mind. And sometimes if you'll put down a color in a painting and you'll be like, whoa, that is not looking good, then decide, do you need to brighten it up? Do you need to dull it down? Does it need to be lighter? Does it need to be darker? So all these things have to be adjusted, and you are learning how to do that by adding either adding some of the yellow color back in, or a more intense yellow, or a more intense blue, or making a tint, shade, or tone of that color. So everything plays together, and it is an endless jigsaw puzzle that that never has any border to it. It just keeps going and going and going and going. There are always new pieces to be added and sections to be solved. So few colors, you get an endless array of other colors to go with it. So make a chart for yourself, and you will be helping put this stuff to memory, and you will have a great reference to look at in the future.
Not only that, I think you get another relationship with the paint as well, so you know how it behaves with the other colors that you have in your collection.
Exactly. You will, that's why I suggest maybe use the yellows that you paint with all the time. And then you will know that my Cayman blue is not the blue that I need for this. I've messed with that enough. Let's go with a different color blue to do that. And let's go back and review our vocabulary before we say goodbye. So we have 3 terms that describe color. You have the value, how light or how dark a color is. You have chroma, how bright or how dull a color is, or you could say how saturated or desaturated that color is. And then you have the hue, which is the name of the color. So those 3 things go a long way toward describing a color to someone, or even to yourself as you're actually working with color. Start thinking of things in those terms. What's the value? What's the chroma? What's the hue? So those things are important to lock away in your memory so that you don't have to try to learn them every time you need to use them. Okay, so that's going to wrap it up for today's lesson. Hopefully you learned an awful lot about green and some important color terminology. So take the time to make your chart, and we'll see you here again next week.